Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Super Wall Jump, a video game podcast where I interview content creators to video game developers and everyone in between. Today, with me today, I have.
Hey guys, I'm Hunter.
Hi guys, I'm Keegan, and we're here to talk about Suck It Up.
Who are you guys and what do you do?
So my name's Hunter. I am a co-owner for the company Metalworks, and we are game developers. I'm the lead technical developer for this game. And so we're here to talk about our game on the podcast. And then Keegan.
And then I'm Keegan. I'm also a co-founder of Metalworks, and have been working on Suck It Up. I'm kind of between tech and design mostly, but just kind of apply wherever I can.
Makes sense. And yes, the name of the game is Suck It Up. So, can you tell us about the game and just give us the broad overview for people who've never touched a game before? Somehow?
Yeah, sure. So, Suck It Up. It is a twin stick shooter. So if you've played games like Enter the Gungeon or Hotline Miami, it's gonna have a similar control scheme to those. It was originally made for a game jam, a global game jam back last January, where we had 48 hours to make a game based on the theme bubble. So we made this game about speech bubbles. So you play as our main character, and he is an underappreciated coworker that works in a super toxic corporate office, and everyone hates him. And one day he gets fired for being too nice, and so he decides to take his megaphone and go back and just insult everyone, all of his coworkers, in order to climb the corporate ladder and take over his company.
Sounds like fun. What inspired that game concept, aside from just speech bubble?
Well, I know during initial ideation, we wanted to differentiate from the traditional like soap bubble or financial bubble that we saw a lot of other teams concepting for. And so speech bubble was the start of it. And so we were thinking about how do we weaponize speech bubbles in a way? And there's sort of the uh, classic stereotype of toxic work environments, and how people hate their corporate offices and how everyone in a corporate office hates each other. So that was kind of the base. I don't know if you want to add anything onto that, Keegan.
Yeah, I mean, it pretty quickly came out from kind of our ideation stage during Game Jam. I remember at one point we had it was almost 2D, like enemies walking up to you, and you were trying to make insults specific to enemies based on like their outfit or on their different pieces of their clothing or things like that. And it pretty quickly turned into like actual attacks and pivoted to more of a top-down.
Yeah, I know during that initial ideation, we were thinking about also working with speech bubbles, doing like typing games and such, like little typing quick time moments. But we ended up just based on the scope of the 48 hours that we initially had. We went with the twin stick shooter control scheme because we felt like that would fit the scope of that better. And also, we just hadn't seen too many 3D twin stick shooters. I know that there's more coming out now lately, but a lot of the really big successful twin stick shooters have been 2D.
Understandably, because 2D I think is easier. You don't have to design 3D assets.
Mhm. But, our team was definitely more fit for 3D because we had, I think 3 people in our initial game jam team that were brought on for 3D modeling, and we had talked a little bit about making the game 2D initially, but then, they would have been out of a job and wouldn't have had anything to do, for the game jam, so we kind of built the game around our team, and then at the end of that game jam, we ended up winning our school's game jam site, and got pulled into another competition where we continued to work on it. And it's kind of turned into a much bigger project than we initially anticipated.
So why did you guys join the game jam in the first place? For those who don't know, game jams, you go, you sign up, and you have to make a game within a set time limit. So why did you guys do that?
Yeah, so our school, we were all SCAD students at the time. Some of us are on the team, some of us have graduated now. But our school is, I believe, the largest global game jam site. So Global Game Jam runs a bunch of different sites across the entire world. And our school handles one of those on-site sites for its students. And so our professors will actually give us less work that week of game jam because they want us to go out and make those games because we spend a lot of time spending weeks just trying to learn new things and perfect like little things like making visual effects and cool materials for 10 weeks. But game jams are really where you get to apply your skills more than learn, especially for newer developers, is what I've found. So it's really a chance to not spend so much time learning, but quickly applying what you learn and learning how to work in small teams and get something done in a short amount of time. It is a very valuable experience. And sometimes, the majority of the time, I think game jams end. Like I've done game jams, and at the end, we've ended it and we're happy with it. But then other times, there's a ton of super successful games out there that started as game jams. Hollow Knight is one that I can think of off the top of my head that originally started as a quick game jam that turned into something more. Keegan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, in the vein of that, Roller Drome as well is one of my favorites that I know started as a GMTK game jam game, I believe. And it's super cool. And it's game jams are a fantastic way to very much not inhibit yourself with just having kind of that open slate. I love the fact that it's like, okay, I have X amount of time, and it has to be a finished product of some level. You don't have time to really sit and think over everything too much, which I think is nice.
You have to focus on actually producing a finished product instead of trying to make your dream game,
Absolutely.
which
Yeah,
I'd
the name of the game is minimal viable product. So it's also a big challenge of game jams is knowing what is good enough, and that's something that's very easy to get stuck in when developing a game for a longer scope. Is just working on one small piece of the game for way too long and trying to get it to 100% when the majority of the time you just need to get it to where it looks good enough so that you can move on and make sure it's fun before you invest all sorts of time into it and make sure that's actually what you want in the final game.
Yeah, I know dev teams that have spent a long time working on a game and then scope creep eventually eats the entire project because,
Mhm.
well, I one of my favorite games was Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, and that had like three different kinds of play and open-ended levels and a Chow Garden. And all right, cool, but can you release a game? Even if it's a
Mhm.
small thing, get figuring out how to finish something, I think, is a skill on its own, and being
Mhm.
able to walk away from something and say, "All right, cool, I'm done." And
Yeah, for sure.
that's a difficult skill for a lot of people. Yeah, what is it like working with a team?
Keegan, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So we've worked on a couple different sizes of teams, and I think what a team is or what it can entail is just completely dependent on the project. Suck it up. We've been very lucky that it's a team that is really all we're all close friends, and that really has made a lot of our development uh, super easy. I feel like easier than it could have been. Um, I don't know. It's great to work with people you really get along with, and it's fantastic too being on a team and you all kind of learn from one another and balance each other's skills out. Where there's tons of things that some of us may be great at and some of us may not, but obviously we can make a much better end product by coming together.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think another big thing that's been really impactful for us working because in a big team, because we have a decently large team, I guess for the scope of game that we're making. Uh, and I think it's really helped because we are all students or recently graduated and looking for jobs and stuff. And so our schedules have kind of been all over the place. And so by having teammates we can rely on and count on, we can take a week or two off and trust that our teammates are getting other work done and still constantly pushing the game forwards, whether it's testing, whether it's doing art stuff, whether it's adding new functionality to the game. The game has continued to move forwards. I don't think there's really been a point since Game Jam for more than a week that the game has just sat there untouched, which is a big problem with working on really small or completely solo dev teams.
Yeah, because life will find a way to screw you over. And oh man, yeah. Unfortunately, someone spilled milk on my computer, and now I lost all my files. Well, I guess that project's over. It's a perk of
Yeah, yeah.
having, you know, repositories and also teammates.
Sure.
Have there ever been communication issues though with having a bigger team? Because I know that even on smaller creative projects, you could still be like, "Oh, hey, cool. I think the color of this thing should be blue. I think it should be green. I'm colorblind. I don't see the point," etc.
Definitely towards the start, I think is where we had more of the communication issues. Like we said, we were a pretty tight team going into this, so we already knew each other's skill sets pretty well. And I think that this project has helped kind of let everyone subconsciously know what everyone else is good at. So towards the start, I feel like there was a lot more friction on certain things, like with art style or with game design, where there was a lot of back and forth on ideas. And there's always back and forth on ideas because that's how you make something better. But and there was obviously some communication issues too. But I think throughout the project, just working together, we kind of have gotten a lot better at knowing who's good at what, so we can kind of take their word a bit more for it, without having to have so much back and forth, which has definitely helped speed up development over the last few months.
Yeah, learning to trust your teammates is important.
Hmm, hmm.
So, how has the game changed since inception? I know that originally you wanted it to be a typing game, and then that turned into a twin stick shooter. But has it changed in any other respects?
At its core, no, it has not changed. And I believe he played our demo at DreamHack Atlanta. And so that was the demo, I think about 2 months after Game Jam. And so since then, we kind of found the fun with that demo and we wanted to expand on it more. The biggest things that we're working on right now is we've been turning the game into a roguelike. So we're adding random map selection, random items, trying to randomize some elements of the game as well as power ups, and just trying to add a lot of replayability. Because right now, the demo that is on our Steam page right now, as of the time of recording, um, it's pretty linear. It's the same level sequence over and over with the exact same quests. But a lot of what we've been doing is trying to use the same elements, but reuse them in more interesting ways. So you don't always know what level you're in. And then we're also we've added optional quests for optional rewards if you want to go ahead and do those in these short little levels so that you can get additional rewards to be more powerful for future bosses. And that is one of the big things that we kind of took from Risk of Rain and fit into our universe is the game constantly now gets harder each run. So you start off, we have an 8 hour work clock in the top right of the screen. So it's like an 8 hour work day, and every in-game hour, all of your coworkers get more angry because they've been at work for longer, and the game gets harder. So by choosing to uh, do more like side quests and stuff to get more powerful, you're now wasting more in-game time and the game is going to get harder. And I think those roguelike elements are some of the biggest changes we've done that are we're going to have a new demo up probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We're showing it off at a convention this weekend, but then we're putting it out on Steam here before long, and that's where we're really going to be testing out a lot of those roguelike features to make sure that we can find the fun in that before we explode it even further and make it a full-fledged game. And Keegan, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, since like the conception of the game, I think the biggest thing I think has changed, or one of the biggest things, is definitely also our leaning into like interactivity and our destruction kind of systems. Um, and I think that was part of what you were talking about, really finding the fun of just blowing your way through these maps and through these environments. And I think the moment we kind of jumped in that direction, where now you can knock down walls with explosions or projectiles, and tables can break and objects are breaking, and the world feels much more alive, and kind of the player can have an impact on it. I think that's been a very cool thing to see kind of come to fruition as well.
Yeah. One of the things that really stood out to me when I played the demo at DreamHack was the fact that basically everything in the level was destructible in some manner, which did help the level feel like more than just set dressing. If like, okay, cool, I can let my enemy blow open this wall and then I can shoot them through the hole that they made. And it can lead to more fun in the moment tactical decisions and overall make it more fun.
Mhm. Absolutely. For
Um,
sure.
so you guys went to DreamHack. Was there any feedback from DreamHack that really made you think like, "Huh, that's a great idea," or "That's a great point"? Or any hurdles that like appeared in the, manner of showing your game to a bunch of people?
So by the time we were at DreamHack, that was, I believe, the third time that we had shown off that demo, and we had it pretty rock solid in terms of functionality. And we obviously knew that there was a lot of content that we were working on behind the scenes that just we didn't have into a demo form yet. Definitely, our first couple conventions that we showed at, we did learn a lot. We learned a lot about tutorialization. We learned a lot about different player skill levels because primarily the playtesting that we had done leading up to those were with other game development students. So people who play video games so much that they want to commit the rest of their life to them. And so generally they have a like higher baseline skill and a little more knowledge of games in general than a lot of the um, gaming audience we would see at conventions. And so we learned a lot about tutorialization, making sure that players that had never played a game like this before could pick it up and understand it and enjoy it. But then players who had played games like this before could pick it up and not feel slowed down by tutorialization. And I think that's a big balance that we're about to have to face again at this upcoming convention we're going to because we have been redoing a lot of content and making it a roguelike and redoing the tutorial and such, kind of finding that balance between tutorializing for new players while not making the game feel boring for more experienced players.
That's one of the things that comes with developing games in the modern era. Back in the 90s or whatever, a lot of times, hey, it would be people's first game. So a long tutorial would be understandable or necessary. Nowadays, with how a lot of games play very similarly, and, you know, just the fact that many people have played games, tutorialization is a hard thing to try and figure out because, as you said,
Mhm.
you have people that have played games for years and people who have never touched a controller, and how do you make it accessible for everyone?
Yeah, and I think one thing that we've really done to try and reach that with this new tutorial, our previous tutorial was definitely more along the lines of this is how you do this, and then we would wait for the player to do this, and then we would teach them how to do the next thing, and then they do the next thing. Where in this demo, we've created a level that is a tutorial in itself. Um, I think that we could put this level out there just in the game, and it wouldn't even feel like a tutorial, but we've sequenced certain things to happen to make sure that the player learns things while still feeling like they're playing the game. We're not taking away player control. We're letting them interact with all the systems and figure stuff out, but we're also sneaking in critical things that the player has to do, whether or not they realize it or not, in order to learn how to engage with mechanics.
Yeah, part of the tutorialization that I received when I played the demo was the post-it notes that you guys all had set up around the booth that
Mhm.
told you not just little jokes, but also like, hey, do this to do this, do this to do this. So it made the experience of going to the booth more satisfying because A, your booth stood out a lot more, and B, by looking around, I got to learn how to play the game better. But trying to get that experience inside of the game is not a one-to-one.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You can't have post-it notes spawn out of people's monitors, sadly.
I mean, unless you do pop-ups, in which case,
Yeah.
yeah, not really gonna work. So aside from conventions, what have you guys been doing to market the game?
Keegan, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So we've been slowly working on kind of a larger social media push. We actually just posted the other day our first Steam like dev diary. We're calling them the Water Cooler Diaries, and it was actually written by our lead designer Gavin. And he's been really crushing it on writing these kind of keeping up with the team and where we're at. This one was a really great like start off where it kind of intros how we began and kind of how we got to where we are now. And we've been slowly working on our YouTube. We've got quite a few videos up on our YouTube as well, kind of about the development and about kind of the roles as well within the team. And so it's been kind of a gradual growing social media push as well.
Okay, I was gonna say, and then we also have a convention coming up this weekend, which I think after this convention is where our next really big social media push is going to happen. There is a bit of a strategy on when you want to market your game. And so we're using these sort of weekly water cooler diaries to keep people interested and keep people informed on what we're working on. And then we're going to use this convention as really good playtesting before we do a huge marketing push and bring a bunch of people onto our demo and playing the game and engaging with it. Because what you don't want to happen is uh, you market too much too early, and then players are not super impressed. But then you don't want the other problem where you don't market enough, and then you make a game that you thought was fun, but then the general public does not think is fun. So kind of trying to strike that balance of, and just also allocating time because social media takes a good bit of time. I know we did one social media push on YouTube this summer where we did some weekly videos just on like general game development, using things we had learned throughout the game process, as well as documenting some of our game process. And then we turned some of that into YouTube shorts as well. Um, and that brought a lot of people in to our demo, and we got to see a lot of feedback in our comment section and such. And so we took that, reworked it, and I think we're getting ready for another big push like that again.
Yeah. You mentioned using the demos as playtests. Can you get into that some more? Like, what good information are you getting from having all these different people play your game, aside from the tutorialization that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing is just seeing how people react to it. Steam also gives a bunch of great analytics of like how far are players getting or how long are players playing the game, things like that. So if there's like an average point where players are stopping playing, we can kind of try and pinpoint where that is. Maybe, but as well, just reading through reviews. We have a lot of positive reviews on our demo, but some still have some good constructive criticism, and also just general bugs and things to watch out for. One thing that I remember, we have a destruction system. Every single thing on the map can be destructible or is destructible and can be destroyed. That comes with a problem when you put a cup on a table, right? Because now you can break the table, but then there's just a floating cup. And so that cup now has to be tied to that table in order to break when the table breaks. And that was one thing that we learned during our demo was that slipped through the cracks a lot. We had a system where we could like click on the cup and then parent it to the table, and then now they'll break together. But it's easy to forget that. And so now we've made a tool that sort of automatically does that parenting for us. That way we won't have any human error. And if there's any like little things that slip through the code, in this case, we can go back and manually parent things. But that's one example of where some playtesting feedback let us know about a tool that we should make because I think there was a bit more human error than we initially anticipated.
Keegan, anything?
Yeah, really watching these demos and these playtests has also been, I think, just a great way to see where that fun really lies. There's really something awesome about watching someone with the controller in hand and really light up at like a specific moment. I know one we see a lot of times is people firing off. We have a lightning shot in the game, and it's kind of like a big charge up release when it's done, but it blasts through, pierces through walls, pierces through enemies, and that's always very fun to see players trying to like line up shots with that weapon and figure out how they can kind of use that to their advantage. So I think that's really been my favorite part is watching those kind of where is the fun really pop out from the crowd.
Knowing why people find your game fun, I think, is important, especially if you're trying to market it, as you've already mentioned. Because if you're trying to market it like, oh, hey, you can be mean to your coworkers, when really it's about being a twin stick shooter and less about being directly mean to your, elderly coworker who keeps like eating your food, you know, it's important to have that messaging be clear.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So are you guys going to be using Steam Next Fest?
So we already, and this I think was a little mistake on our part. We did the last Steam Next Fest, or I'm not sure if it was the last one, but it was the one this summer. Um, And we initially were under the impression that that's kind of where you got wish lists, but after Steam Next Fest, we learned that that was a bit of an older strategy. You do want a decent following going into Steam Next Fest in order to get on some of those front pages. It's just become a lot bigger of an event, especially as Steam has grown. So we are now ineligible for any future Next Fests. But if we were to do it again, and we also didn't entirely know the scope of the project at that point, so we were like, why not Steam Next Fest? But definitely, if we were to do it again, we would probably be going towards this upcoming Steam Next Fest because we're over 1,000 wish lists now, and we should be getting a ton more at this convention and with some of our social media pushes. But sadly, we're ineligible. But we have other marketing we're going to be doing to help get the game out there to people.
Yes, for Steam Next Fest, you only ever get one, which is a shame, but also it makes sense. So that way you can't be someone like 7 Days to Die and be like, "Oh, hey guys, have you tried out our game that's been in development for over a decade?"
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, what games do you guys look up to? Like, what's a game that you look out there and say, "Man, I wish I could make that"?
I am a huge, which is very fun. I'm a huge kind of sandbox and I don't know what the other word for it would be, but games like Teardown, Kinshi, things like that, Dwarf Fortress with like super deep kind of interacting systems. I love
Mhm.
that kind of world and that kind of environment to play in. And I've been getting a little bit of a fix for like Teardown, of course, with our destruction system. That was something I was very excited to like help work on and figure out how we could do that with the tech team. But really, I mean, I'll play just about anything. RPG games all the time. Baldur's Gate 3 has been one I've slowly been getting back into. It's just a huge time sink for me, so little by little.
Yeah. I think the game type you're referring to is an immersive sim because that's to me the best way to describe a game like Kenshi,
Hmm.
which is all right, cool. There's a bunch of systems going on here, and they're all gonna interact with each other. And part of the fun is figuring out how you can like poke one thing and see everything, see all the changes ripple out. I think about Dwarf Fortress and how cats were dying of alcohol poisoning in that game because the way that cats clean themselves was cats would walk in a liquid and then they'd lick the liquid off of themselves and then they would ingest it. So cats would walk on the floors of taverns, step in ale, and then drink the ale off their feet, thus getting drunk and thus dying of alcohol poisoning, which
That's
is one of the fun parts of an immersive sim. And also what makes it a nightmare to try and program and make because you have to try and build all those systems that interlock.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely as a genre, it is definitely some of my favorites, but it is daunting. And even just looking little bits into like where those systems or how those systems are created, it's a pretty steep ask for sure.
Hunter, what about you?
I think I tend to gravitate towards more roguelike games, specifically games revolving around the concept of number go up. I in any game ever, if there is a glass cannon item, I will take it. I just love seeing big numbers. Like Risk of Rain, Balatro. There's even a VR game that I really love, a VR roguelike called Ancient Dungeons VR. That one's really awesome. I love progression in games, but short-term progression. I've never been like an MMO gamer or anything where I am playing the same game for like years and years and hours. I like a lot quicker progression in games, but that is one thing I crave is progression. And another game that comes to mind with that quick progression would be there was a battle royale called Spellbreak. It's not around anymore. They shut down the servers a couple years ago, but I really during the battle royale craze, I really gravitated towards that one because there was crazy per match progression. Like over the course of 20 minutes, you went from this like very grounded feeling sorcerer to just feeling absolutely overpowered in the end game. And that was one of my favorite elements of that and what drew me to that.
Yeah, there was a brief time in Fortnite where they had like a quirk system where if you
Yes.
survived for long enough, you would get various abilities, and by the end of every single match, you were having an incredible time. They got rid of that system, and I am sad for ever since because that it made the game so much more chaotic and fun. At one point, I didn't touch the ground for like 3 minutes because I had a shotgun. I had a shotgun that sent me flying. I had a perk that allowed me to like have balloons constantly. And I also had low gravity. So I basically would jump once and then fire my shotgun and just sort of float around enemies. And I think I won that game because no one could touch me because I never landed.
Getting constantly more powerful over the course of like 10-20 minute matches just always feels so so fun. I know Spellbreak also had a similar system where you would choose your class at the start. So you would choose an elemental class, and each time one of the zone circles closed, you now gained an extra ability. So like if you had the fire gauntlet, then you would shoot fireballs. But then after that first circle closed, your fireballs would shoot out little mini fireballs wherever it hit. So you kind of got a little extra AoE off of it. And then now your fireballs can start burning people, and now it can burn them for longer and have more reactions and such. And that as well, like turning Suck It Up into a roguelike has kind of been very exciting for me on that aspect, because one thing that we're really pushing with our items that we're giving to players in Suck It Up is there's not going to be a ton. Um, like you're not going to be getting 10, 20 items per level. You'll probably get like 2 to 3 if you do all of the side quests. But we wanted to make sure that each of those items is really significant. So that if you end up getting the same item twice and it stacks, it's like, whoa, okay, this is getting kind of out of hand. That's sort of the goal, is we want the game to get more chaotic the further you go into it. And so we think that um going with the less items that are more impactful is really going to help play into that.
Yeah, there's a thing that I try to live by whenever I'm playing a game. I look at the 10 I have a thing called the 10% rule, where if all an upgrade does is gives me plus 10% to something, I think it's a bad upgrade because, well, who cares about 10%? I would much rather prefer an upgrade sort of vis-a-vis Ratchet and Clank, where, okay, cool, you now fire 3 bullets instead of one, and every upgrade that you get changes the way that you play and it has an actual tangible impact. Vis-a-vis, oh hey, did you know you can do plus 10 damage when you're behind an enemy and also crouching and also singing a lullaby? It's like, okay, well, then you don't really want me to have extra damage. You just want me to play a certain way, but not reward me for it. I see.
Yeah, yeah. And I think some games do handle the more minor stat bonuses very well. Like Risk of Rain 2 comes to mind, and they get by that by giving you so many chances to get a lot of items. And there are some extremely impactful items in Risk of Rain. They have a really great rarity system to their items, but they give you a lot of chances to get a lot of common items. And so the common items sort of give you that constant feel of slow progression, and then those like red items and yellow items, they give you that instant moment of like, okay, I'm more powerful, which I think is a really great way that they handle that.
Hunter, have you played Mega Bonk yet?
I have, yes, I
Okay,
have.
I was about to say you should play Mega Bonk
Oh yeah.
because Um, one of the things that I really enjoy with games like Mega Bonk and other games that I would consider incremental is the difference between additive stacking for stats versus multiplicatively stacking for stats, which is a whole different ball game.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Um, Talking about like additive and multiplicative stacking, we have one of the big changes that we did this summer was switching our project framework from just sort of our own custom made up framework over to Unreal's gameplay ability system. It is a it gives you a lot of nice tools, um, but it's more of a framework for making sort of number go up style games. Um, and it is definitely very difficult to get into. But I guess if there's any Unreal developers watching in here, it can be done by a small team.
Mhm.
Gas, its abbreviation is Gas, but it is what powers a lot of those big AAA Unreal titles. Like I know, it was originally made for Paragon, I believe, and now Fortnite's running with it, Valorant's running with it, and really one of the most powerful parts of it is gameplay effects, which are easy ways to change those items, and they have a backend written for it. And it just makes turning turning your game into like a roguelike or having constant progression throughout your game really seamless if you take the time to set it up. So I know in a past project that I did with items, it took us probably 2 or 3 weeks to get items done under our own custom framework. And that was for like 10 or 15 items. And some of those items were a little more custom, other ones were more just stat changes and such. But I cranked out for Suck It Up, I believe, 10 items in about 3 hours, um, with 7 of them being stat increases and 3 of them being more custom. And they were like fully ready to go, showing up in the UI correctly with icons and everything. And so, any Unreal developers out there, I highly recommend you look into gameplay ability system if you're looking to make any sort of roguelike games, or games with that level of number progression.
That is definitely going to be very helpful because I know for a fact that there are multiple Unreal developers that listen to this show. It's part of why I do developer interviews. So, what attracted you guys to Unreal as opposed to Unity?
The main reason is our school, their curriculum was built around Unreal. That's just how it was set up a while back. We had a, I know I took one Unity class as like an AR VR elective at our school, and that one was in Unity because Unity is very widely used in VR applications still, as well as mobile. It's used a lot in those. Uh, but I think we just gravitated more towards Unreal because it's what we were all comfortable with. Also, like with the game jam nature, you got to go with what you're comfortable with. And
Mhm.
I think that every project should be taken, uh, or the decision for what game engine you use should be taken on a project to project basis. Every game jam has really good pros and cons. For example, Unity has really great 2D support. Unreal has really good like cinematic AAA level lighting that's really easy to set up. Not saying that you can't do 2D in Unreal, not saying that you can't do that level lighting in Unity, but each game engine sort of has these areas where they specialize. But in the case of a short game jam, going with what you're comfortable with is definitely the way to go if you're trying to get something that you might be able to work on afterwards.
It's like if you're gonna run a marathon or something, you don't buy new shoes. You buy the shoes that you've been using to train for the marathon.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
You
Absolutely.
use what you're good at. It's okay. What systems would you like to see added to the game?
Ooh, that is a good question.
I know, I guess this is a little more a little different than like specific systems, but one thing that we're really working on right now is fun boss fights. Going to these conventions, I think Keegan was talking about those light up moments earlier
Mhm.
that we see in players' faces. The biggest light up moment by far is when the players see the CEO boss and fight the CEO boss. That is, everyone gets so excited. We had people coming back every day at DreamHack, every day at pretty much every convention we've been to, just trying to beat that boss for the first time because it's so exciting to them. So bosses are a big part of this game. And so one thing that we've been working on right now is coming up with very unique bosses, but also having to balance that we only have 3 programmers on our team, and so we can't do anything super crazy with the bosses at the same time. So coming up with simple systems to make really fun and unique and engaging boss fights so that we can have a bunch of different bosses. As well as we're working on adding uh, sort of categorizing the corporate office into different, I guess, for lack of a better word, biomes. So the general like office area that's in the demo right now, that's being transitioned to the toxic work environment, and it's going to have its own boss called the Tyrant that sort of rules over those floors. They're like the manager for those floors. And then we're thinking of adding an IT department where all of the enemies are now like TV screens on wheels, and that boss might be like some giant monitor that's stationary and is sort of summoning things to attack you. That one's a lot more conceptual, but then eventually you'll make it all the way up to the very top, and fight the corporate overlord. So you're kind of taking out bosses one at a time, because we feel that the the CEO boss really wowed players, and so we want to give them more of those wow moments.
I know
Absolutely.
that part of the wow moment for me was going through a fairly large level, and then the paradigm of me going through the level completely changed. There's no way for me to expect that the boss that I would fight would simply steamroll the entire level on its way to kill me.
Mhm. And yeah, so it's a lot of things like that. That took no extra work on the programming end really to make that happen, but by letting the player have to travel through the entire level to get through the boss, and then the boss steamrolling that level means that every single decision that the player made going up that level now has an impact on that boss fight. Because we saw players that tried to take out every single enemy and break a bunch of walls on their way up to the CEO so that they could have better paths to run away from the giant tank, as it was plowing down the walls. But then there were other players that sort of ignored all of that, especially on their first time when they didn't know. They didn't take out all those enemies. They didn't clear pathways for them to get through. And then they sort of had that, like, oh my gosh, I messed up moment, on their way down. And so doing things like that, especially makes bosses feel like more of a journey to complete, having to figure out different strategies and stuff that you can use to take them out. I think will be really fun versus having a game that you can easily just steamroll through your first time. You get like an hour and a half out of it. You beat the CEO, and then yeah, there's replayability, but there wasn't a journey to get there. And that's one thing that I think is really important for roguelikes.
Yeah, there needs to be a sort of difficulty of scale where the first boss should be fairly achievable, but
Mhm.
um, RNG also plays like a major role into it. I'd say one of the fun things about Hades, I think when Hades is done well, is bosses sometimes have random stuff you can't really prepare for. I think of the first boss fight in the first Hades game, where if you upgrade it, you can get a random sister who has a completely different attack pattern.
Mhm.
And so that way you can't just do the same thing every time. You have to be able to think on your feet a little bit.
Mhm.
And surprising
Yeah.
the player is important for keeping them engaged.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. And it really is that balance of figuring out how much playtime do you want, because every game has a certain amount of realistic replayability. And so what I've noticed a lot with a lot of rogue like games, they tend to fall more under the category of rogue light, where you can have constant progression that you keep with you forever. Like you can upgrade back at the lobby and keep that progression forever. And as the genre sort of exploded, I feel like I've seen more games use the roguelite element, as a way to keep you from getting to the end, like to keep you from getting to the final boss, um, versus trying to make the bosses be a learning curve. Like you're not going to beat them on your first time if you've never encountered them before. Maybe if you've watched someone play through the game and you've seen the strategies that they've used, you'd have a decent chance. But I think it can sometimes to me be frustrating when I know that I physically can't beat this boss because I haven't upgraded enough. I haven't played enough to upgrade my character's base stats enough in order to take out this boss.
Yeah, so there has to be a balance between, okay, cool. Can you beat this boss with skill, or can you only beat this boss with, oh, hey, cool, I got the fireball power up, which means, I can
Yeah.
kill this boss easier. You want to make sure that players with a high skill level can beat the boss without any attachments, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. But then I also think those roguelike or those roguelite elements can be really helpful for players who are struggling to help them get their base stats up a little bit. So maybe if they're not as used to these types of games, it gives them a little bit of a boost to help them get through. Once they've played through enough times, you sort of help them get a little further each time naturally, with some upgrades, as well as them getting better skill wise.
Yeah. It makes me think of Going Under, a game by Aggro Crab. I
Hmm.
don't know if you've played it, but it was a rogue-like game, not a rogue light game. You could
Hmm.
unlock more weapons and stuff that you could find along your runs, but for the most part, there was really nothing you could do to upgrade your character between runs. So all you could do was just get better at the game,
Hmm.
which I was on sort of a split mind about it. I wanted to be able to get like a little bit more health or make sure my items were just a little bit more durable over time, but that might just be due to the prevalence of rogue lights as a genre versus the rogue like, which completely resets you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And right now our demo is in a roguelike state, but we do plan to add some of those roguelite elements later on for full release. That way, because we feel it's important that we establish realistically how long do we want our game to be. Even though it's a game that has a loop and there's replayability, how long do we want the player to play? Like what's our range for how long they should play until they take out the CEO? Because we don't want the player to play for like 20, 30 hours and never beat the CEO, because maybe those 20 or 30 hours are spread out over the course of a year. And so they don't have time to constantly just like sit down and get their skills better all in one session. It's a little more fragmented, those play sessions. So being able to offer those roguelite upgrades and help them get along and give our game a reasonable amount of time to get to that final boss, I think is something that's really going to help sell it, and leave players with a good level of satisfaction at the end of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's one of the things about making a game is that it's also about how long the game takes to beat. Because a lot of people see a game and it's like, oh, well, this is a 60-hour experience. And a lot of times people see how long you can play the game as like a level of quality. And I don't think that's necessarily true. The Witcher 3 is a fantastic game, but it's too big for me to finish because it's so big that whenever I take a break from playing it, I go back and it's like, "Oh god, I have no idea what I was doing.
Mhm.
Gerald's in this one city and he's doing this cutscene, but I have no idea who he's talking to. Do I need to start over?" And then I need to restart the whole like 80-hour experience. And sometimes I just want a shorter, more easily digestible experience
Yeah.
Sure.
without it feeling like a throwaway thing, you know?
Yeah,
So
and I think that's that I think that is a big reason for the rise in these games that have a lot of replayability, but the rounds only last like 20 minutes or an hour or so, is because they are a bit more pick up and play. And so versus having to sit down for 6 hours to have a good experience with the game, which there's nothing wrong with that. There's a ton of great games that do that. What about at the end of a workday and you have like 30 minutes, an hour before you plan to go to bed, but you want to play some games? There's a lot of games that you just realistically can't pick up. And so these shorter loop, replayable games, I think really help fit that niche of after work type games for people
yeah,
who are
because
getting older and have
when you're an adult,
responsibilities.
yeah, when you're an adult, you do not necessarily have 8 hours a day to just sit down and play video games.
Yeah,
Most adults have, like, maybe an hour or 2, assuming that hour or 2 is not broken up by chores or kids or just random responsibilities. Maybe they get a phone call from their buddy and they're like, "Ah, I haven't talked to Doug in, like, 3 years. I should talk to him." They don't
yeah, for
necessarily have
sure.
that same amount of like, okay, cool, I can't dedicate X amount of time. And
Mhm.
Yeah,
game I think you're right. I think part of gaming nowadays is the market reacting to, yeah, people say they want long, deep single player experiences, but a lot of people just don't have the time for that.
yeah, and I mean, with how accessible gaming has gotten, especially like for our generation, we kind of grew up with video games, like home consoles and such. And so now that we're getting older and have jobs or are in college and such, we're having to shift our gaming patterns because yeah, we have time to play an 8-hour gaming session sometimes on the weekends, on some weekends, but we still want to be able to play those games because they're a great way to de-stress. They're a great way to talk to your friends and have something in common. But you just don't always have those huge time chunks that you can dedicate towards it.
Yeah, but that's what growing up is, I guess. You have less time. That was the topic of last week, the most recent podcast that I did. I was talking to people who were in their 40s about how, hey, yeah, gaming has to change when you get older.
No, for sure, for sure.
All right, so where can people find Suck It Up or follow you guys and see what you guys are up to?
Yeah, so we are Suck It Up on all socials, as well as if you just search Suck It Up on Steam, we should be the only game that pops up there. So you can head over there, play our demo. We should have a new demo out by January 1st, or if not early January. So if you want to try that out, that would be awesome.
Keegan, anything?
Yeah, like I said, super excited for our new demo. Definitely leave us some feedback. There's some cool stuff coming and some new. I know we teased a little bit of it here, but definitely some cool features coming.
All right, thank you guys so much for coming on. If you guys enjoyed listening to this episode, please like, follow, subscribe, and tell your friends. I don't spend any money to advertise this show, so it's really all just word of mouth. Uh, tell your friends, and next year will be even better. But yeah, thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day.